recently I've published a book called The Power in You. So if you have time, you can pass through Manda Hill bookworld store, and you can find yourself a copy of that book and just find the information in terms of it. So in a nutshell, that's me.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. You know, he's just given us a fraction of what is in his biography, because it was pretty long. And I was like, I love someone that's able to contain. It was so impressive for me to read. So it's in line with childhood trauma, because it's one of those events and happenings in life that really does impact someone as they get to be an adult. So in your own understanding, weighing off from...
really define what it that are not pleasing, events that are distracting, you know. For instance, I would give, parents arguing in a house, children being yelled at, So because it's children in this aspect who are involved. And mainly when we talk about children, we do not disregard the adolescents. And so we're talking about the age bracket of 0 to 18 years. How are these individuals in this age bracket affected when it comes to child trauma? And so we begin to go from there and understand that child trauma is an issue that really needs to be addressed and needs to be talked about, and finding real answers and solutions in terms of how are we going to solve this problem.
Yeah, so in my introduction, I gave some statistics, and I'd like you to just observe and maybe give a comment on the statistics. So in the year 2023, we recorded a total number of 10,434 reports of gender-based violence. Now imagine this, if these are cases that are coming from, let's say, one household, of course, one home, should I say, there are kids in that house, and they are observing what is happening. The gender-based violence that is taking place in that particular environment. Children are seeing that, and if they do not have anyone they can talk to, they can, find comfort or a place of peace. Okay, there's nothing that is wrong. Trauma, to panic, to feel depressed, to feel the anxiety, be anxious and all that. So I don't know what you think about the statistics, and maybe let me go further. Mr. Ray Amonga, of course, the police spokesperson, also indicated to say we had about 2,550, child victims who were abused countrywide. That's a big number.
Yeah, it's a very big number, and you look at increase as the year goes by, and that 24%, which is close to 25%, children are actually affected in the homes. And so we need to be able to realize the solutions to what is causing the rise in these numbers, in terms of trying to reduce the numbers.
Of course,
25%.
to affect them, even as they get into exhibiting a certain behavior that is as a result of an event that happened when they were children. People, they were not shown enough love, or they...
Childhood trauma can actually be categorized in many forms. When we talk of it being affected from gender-based violence, but childhood trauma can also come from bullying and body shaming, and so that is an aspect that really affected me as a child growing up. It's sort of being having a condition of albinism. There are always these misconceptions, and you find that individuals are able to body shame you based on how you appear, or in this case, how I appeared, or how I appear. So I always had this challenge in my primary school, and I developed a certain kind of introversy, So it brings out these effects in an individual to say, because I'm going through this experience, it sort of demotivates an individual, and hence the reduction in motivational experience. Yeah.
Wow.
So as a child, I have experienced that, but it's the matter of being able to grow out of that notion, being able to say to myself, okay, in as much as I'm being bullied, but the aspect of being able to get up and just forgo the event is what really matters most.
Yeah, of course, sometimes it's about you understanding the situation and understanding what an event or an experience is causing to you, the pain it's bringing to you, that you tend to come out of that. But in an event where you do not realize to say this might be trauma, it's very difficult for you to come out of that. So at what point did you realize to say you are going through a traumatic, experience?
You get to realize that this thing is traumatic when it hits you emotionally, because when you're talking about trauma, you're talking about emotions, you're talking about your psychological aspect of being able to realize things, So when I began to realize, to say emotionally, when these things are uttered to me, to say you are like that, you're like that, those terms, that comes along, I began to realize to say these things are actually affecting how productive I am in terms of being able to associate with others. You find that you isolate yourself just to be able to avoid those things, and so you get to realize to say, okay, this is traumatic.
Yeah.
And then you need to find ways in order to go around the issue. So you get to realize through that.
Yeah, so I'm curious because as he is explaining, I'm thinking, did you experience this, traumatic situation when you were a kid, or maybe it is when you were, should I say, old enough as a person?
Yeah, my condition, it's a condition that is permanent, if I would say. So the condition, definitely, the experience,
the bullying and all that.
Yeah, it started as a child.
Okay.
Then you get to realize that event when you're just a child. Then it's sort of, because it's a traumatic event, so sometimes with others it sticks in the mind, and so you get to have these flashbacks in terms of what these people used to say about you, and then you actually, in my case, I'm still able to have such comments from people, being able to experience it throughout again. But it's the matter of accepting, as you have mentioned, and just being able to move on and just saying, no, it is what it is.
Wow. Mr. Chungu, you mentioned accepting it and moving on quite a number of times. And honestly, I feel it's very inspiring that you were able to overcome, the effects of childhood trauma in your life. And maybe you are still overcoming it, because I honestly feel like with events that happened when we were younger, when they are so traumatic, it takes a lifelong process to continuously keep track of yourself and ensure that you're not succumbing to the negative emotions that were left from past events. So what's your advice to people out there on how they can overcome childhood trauma? Maybe first, before we even get to that, how can someone pinpoint that they do have childhood trauma?
There's certain factors that will make you realize that you are going through a traumatic event. You get to realize some factors. When you realize that the event is violent, when the event is actually distressing to you, when you experience it, it doesn't give you that rest of mind. You get to remember it. Then you begin to realize, to say, okay, this event is actually something that may affect how I act in the future. So you begin to realize through those violent acts, you begin to see, maybe like for children, you are in a house and then your parents are violating each other, beating each other. Children sometimes, they are being beaten. Some children, they're being shouted at. No, you can't do certain things because of that. So you begin, when those events begin to flash back in your mind, even if the people are not telling you the same things, then you get to realize this event is actually traumatic. And so when you grow older, you begin to find solutions in terms of how you deal with it.
Okay. So, Mr. Chungu, I know your experience is different from other people's experiences, but I would like to get it from your perspective. What could be the impact of childhood trauma on the development of a person? Because I've noticed you've mentioned, as you were growing up, maybe in school, people would, bully you and all that. What impact did that have in your personal development as an individual?
Yeah, I think the main thing is actually, because as I have mentioned, it isolates you from other people. It's sort of, you don't have that social connection with the other people because you are afraid to experience that event. You are scared to say this event might actually reoccur. So what you do is actually hide yourself from people. And then what does that do? It hinders your opportunities as a person to develop. You cannot develop as an individual in terms of professional, academics, and other things because you have isolated yourself. People cannot see you. They cannot realize your potential. They cannot realize what you are able to offer. No, because you are scared, you are afraid of experiencing the same event. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, Blessings, you know, Mr. Chungu's story has really, I feel, gotten to me because I feel like there's certain conditions, you know, there's childhood trauma that comes from, like Mr. Chungu mentioned it, like you mentioned, from abuse, you know, from witnessing violence in a home. And then there's childhood trauma that's come from having albinism as well. And I feel the conversation on albinism is one that I feel we should not shy away from, you know. So Mr. Chungu, before we even go any further, what would you like people out there to understand about albinism and how it can impact one's mental health if people with albinism are discriminated?
You know, the first thing we need to realize, even if we describe that albinism, you know, one thing I have come to realize, or one thing I've come to tell myself is that albinism is not a disability, even if people put it in that bracket of being a disability.
Love that.
Because I am able to do what you are able to do. I'm able to do what you are able to do.
Yeah.
So if I have a condition in terms of visual sight, that does not regard me as a disability because anyone can have a visual impairment.
Yeah.
You know, so I do not like describing myself as being disabled. And so that's one thing people should realize who have albinism in terms is to say, you shouldn't accept to say your condition is a disability.
Yeah.
You actually accept it the way it is. You are human. You are able to do anything that other people are able to do.
That is so intriguing, you know, having a positive mindset. That's one thing I've picked from you.
Exactly.
You don't need to look down on yourself because of where you are. No, you have the abilities that anyone else has. So move forward and do that thing that people are even thinking that you cannot do it. Surprise them, do it.
And I think it's a part of the processes that Mr. Chungu has mentioned on how you begin to come out of that state of having the effects of a traumatic event. I feel beginning to see yourself as a person that is able and beginning to put aside people's opinions, but then looking at yourself in light of how you should see yourself, looking at yourself as a strong person and as a person because we're able no matter what. So I really do love what you've said.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
definitely.
Mr. Chungu, research shows that childhood trauma survivors are more likely to have learning problems, including lower grades in school. Yeah, and of course, higher risk of substance abuse and suicide attempts. What is your comment on this? Because we know that when somebody is having the pain inside, they don't have where they can, you know, go and seek comfort or help. They tend to do things that we don't even expect them to do. For instance, they might start abusing drugs. They might, you know, start conceiving those thoughts of, you know, committing suicide and all that. And yeah, in a case where someone is going to school, they might be having or lagging behind in terms of their academic performance. What is your comment on that regarding childhood trauma?
It really affects the child's academic performance. You know, when you are as a child, you need a home that is peaceful. You need, when you go back home, you're able, as a child, you're able to freely read, you know, but when this child is experiencing or is undergoing a traumatic event, and then they go to school, they are unable to focus because of what they are going through. Yeah. You see? And so because they are unable to focus, you know, it reduces their performance in terms of academic, their concentrations are low. And so hence, that's where now you start getting those low grades. And so when you start getting low grades, you, as a child, you begin to have disinterest in school. You have that disinterest, you know. As you have that disinterest, now you begin to abscond school.
Yeah.
You know? then you find yourself
Having
in,
lower
in
grades.
vices that are not good. And so when you are in vices like substance abuse, you know, doing things that are not good or not acceptable in terms of school, you know, you get those expulsions. And so once this child is expelled from school, where do they go? They go back into the communities to be junkies, the same junkies that we have. And then they continue using these substance abuse. And then, you know, some people or some children, you know, they'll have the traumatic event will be so impactful that they can no longer take it. And so they commit those suicide activities.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot, you know, and I feel it really gets sad when a child getting into their teenage years turns to vices like alcohol and drugs, because I feel like oftentimes it begins to look like an escape. And also, one thing that we need to realize is that victims of a childhood abuse or traumatic childhood events would often look for acceptance, you know, and so they'll find themselves in wrong crowds, wrong relationships once they get older, because they want to get that acceptance that maybe they never had as a child, especially if someone grew up in a home whereby they didn't get that love. So just on that point, let's talk about how childhood trauma begins to affect one's relationships. We can weigh off romantic relationships and even friendships, because some people really find it hard to even make proper friendships because maybe they experience certain events as a child that make them feel like they're not enough, they're not worthy of love. You can break it down for us in that light.
Yeah, definitely. So we've mentioned to say childhood trauma is affected in three categories. So it's either you're affected physically, emotionally, or sexually.
Yeah.
So you'll find that this child, when they're emotionally affected, they begin to have thoughts of, say, maybe I'm not loved by my parents, maybe I'm not contributing enough, or maybe I'm not just good enough for them. And so these events actually tend to isolate them from other people, you know, to say maybe I'm not good enough. They get to have this notion to say, okay, I need to do more, I need to do this in order to be perfect for others. So you begin to make efforts in terms of trying to please other people, but you can never please a human being, you know. So you begin to realize in that manner to say something is wrong there with the child.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You brought up, positive points. So now I'm thinking to myself, and I'm tempted to ask, what is your circle of friendship like?
They
Like that.
Yeah.
the circle of friendship.
Yeah.
No, myself, I embrace everyone. You know, I am someone who's very much accommodative and very social, you know, because I know through socializing and interacting, you know, you get to learn new things, you get to do things that you've never done before. You get to know things that you never knew before. It's through people.
Yeah.
You cannot, every man is not an island, not so. So we need people. No wonder we are called Homo sapiens, you know, meaning we are individuals that need each other. So we need each other. We need that collaboration with one another. And that's why, on my part, I like actually welcoming everyone. So my circle of friends is actually a combination of everyone. I can interact with junkies. I can interact with any kinds of categories of people.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Mr. Chungu,
Yes.
Serena mentioned in the introduction, so you are also an author.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, I'm really interested in that aspect very much. Now, looking at the works that you do, and of course you've read a number of books by other people, do you think as a nation we are doing enough regarding literary works that might concern mental health issues or mental health per se?
I think as a nation we're actually trying, I would say. You know, there are different organizations. I think they should be the Zambia Health Mental Organization, something like that. You know, you have different organizations that try to promote the rights of people that have mental disorders, you know. Individual organizations like non-governmental organizations that try to come on board and just try to address this issue of mental health, exactly. So organizations are willing to participate in the fight of child trauma and mental health. But what we should be able to realize as well, in as much as people are willing to do that, individuals are willing or organizations are willing, but we should also focus on the barriers that affect the promotion of mental health. You know, people may be willing to promote mental health, but do we have the necessary infrastructure? You know, you cannot just say, oh, we are treating individuals with mental health when you don't have the infrastructure. You need infrastructure as a country or as facility. You need facilities in order to be able to encompass people. You need resources like human resource. You need funding. So if we are able to organize these resources all together as a nation, then definitely we may be doing enough. But if these answers or these aspects are not actually addressed, then there is work to be done.
Oh, yeah. Serena, my time here is stuck, so I don't know if it's time to go or we still have enough time here. Yeah, but I think we're having a good conversation here, and from what he said, you know, resources are very important for us to address issues. This is why we need more people that can commit themselves to writing about these things. And as much as we're talking about them on TV, on radio, it is also important to document them, you know, in literary works. Like you write a book about this, explaining so that people can understand what this is.
Exactly, blessings. Not only that, but if we do look at the statistics, I'll bring them just to be exact, probably on our next show. But then the number of people that are specialized in psychiatry in the country is actually quite low. I know we have people that are therapists and they did other things like maybe psychology. There are those courses that, yes, people have done, and we do have quite a number of people. But then if you look at the number of people in other professions as compared to people that are able to tackle mental health issues, it's quite lower by far. That already is a concern. So we also need people that are trained specifically to help people. And not only that, let's have affordable, you know, help that can be offered to people. I know many people, Mr. Chungu and Blessings, that want to seek therapy, even for childhood trauma, but then it's expensive, you know. So let's talk about that for a bit. Why is therapy so expensive? What are your thoughts on therapy, Mr. Chungu? Have you...
We need to do a lot in terms of promoting this therapy and just making them affordable to people, you know, because I'm specialized in terms of offering therapy to someone who's mentally ill. And so I tend to, I'm talking about people that are specialized in that aspect, you know. So they get to feel, I guess, a certain kind of special, you know, and so they like to put a price in terms of how much they should charge these people, but that shouldn't be the notion, you know. These things should be readily available, you know. You are helping a human being, you are helping an individual out there in terms of trying to alleviate these issues of mental health and traumas, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, availability of resources is one important aspect, but of course, we are also providing you with information so that you can make the right decisions.
Yeah.
If you are such a person that is, you know, going through a traumatic situation, please reach out to people that can help you. And of course, you can also, you know, connect you to the right people that can help you. But of course, Serena, it has been a good conversation, and I can't wait to have another conversation like that. Yeah,
definitely.
But of course, in the interest of time, this is where we come to the end of the show. But before that, there's that one special question that
I know it's coming up.
This particular TV show introduced. We have a segment where we ask this, you know, candid question to our guests, and I hope Mr. Chungu is ready because of the topic that we're having today.
Yes.
Today, I'm not feeling like going outside the topic. I feel like I should stick to it.
Wow, that I didn't expect that either.
But anyway, the segment is a random question segment.
Yeah.
So yeah.
We're still together.
You said precise. He kept it short
I'm as
and
precise as possible.
One word.
Of course.
Beautiful. We thank God.
Close the show. I don't want to be, you know, put in trouble. Close the show.
Well, Mr. Chungu, Mr. Brian Chungu, thank you so much for coming through. And of course, for our viewers, thank you for the check-in TV show on Litovia television. We have been childhood trauma and the different areas of our lives that can be affected by childhood trauma. Until next time, next Thursday at 15:30, it is bye-bye.
Stay peacefully, and of course, like I say, peace in the Middle East. Thank you.